Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to finish reading Amelia and Eleanor Go for a Ride by Pam Ryan. Within the hour, Amelia and Eleanor boarded the Curtiss Condor twin-motor airplane. For a moment, both women looked at the mysterious night sky. Then, without changing her gloves, Amelia slipped into the cockpit and took the wheel. The plane rolled down the runway faster and faster. Lights from the airstrip flashed in front of them, and then they lifted into the dark. How amusing it is to see a girl in a white evening dress and high-heeled shoes flying a plane, Eleanor said. Amelia laughed as she made a wide sweep over Washington, D.C. and turned off all the lights in the plane. Out the window, the Potomac River glistened with moonshine. The Capitol dome reflected a soft golden halo, and an enormous light-drenched monuments looked like tiny miniatures. Soon the peaceful countryside gave way to shadowy woodlands. The Chesapeake Bay came to a meandering outline on the horizon, and even though they knew it wasn't so, it seemed as if the plane crawled slowly through star-struck space. Eleanor marveled. It's like sitting on top of the world. And look, that truly must look like sitting on top of the world. What an amazing experience. When it was time to land, Amelia carefully took the plane down. A group of reporters had gathered, anxious to ask questions. Mrs. Roosevelt, did you feel safe knowing that a girl was flying that ship? Just as safe, said Eleanor. Did you fly the plane, Mrs. Roosevelt? Asked one reporter. What part did you like best? Said another. I enjoyed it so much, and no, I didn't actually fly the plane, not yet, but someday I intend to. I was thrilled by the city lights, the brilliance of the blinking pinpoints below. Amelia smiled. She knew just how Eleanor felt. As the Secret Service agents drove them slowly back to the White House, Amelia and Eleanor agreed that there was nothing quite as exciting as flying. What could compare? Well, they admitted maybe the closest thing would be driving in a fast car on a straightaway road with a stiff breeze blowing against your face. Arm's length, they walked up the steps to the White House. Eleanor whispered something to Amelia, and then they hesitated, letting the rest of the group walk ahead of them. Are you coming inside, Mrs. Roosevelt? Someone asked. But by then, they had wrapped their silk scarves around their necks, and they were hurrying towards Eleanor's new car. These two are something else, aren't they? Without changing her gloves, Eleanor quickly slipped into the driver's seat and took her turn at the wheel. With the wind in their hair and the brisk air stinging their cheeks, they flew down the road. After they had taken a ride about the city streets of Washington, D.C., they finally headed back to the White House. For dessert, Eleanor Roosevelt's pink clouds on angel food cake. So they did. They went for more than one ride that night, didn't they? They were quite daring. And then they give you a recipe if you wanted to make angel food cake. Author's note. Amelia and Eleanor, just mentioning their names brings choruses of "They're my heroes" or "I've always admired them." So when I found an obscure reference to their night flight, I couldn't wait to write a story about it, if only it were true. I sat in the library and scanned rolls and rolls of newspaper film and finally found the Associated Press articles. Later, Brian Sisnick found a photograph from that very evening. The incident really happened. In 1932, Amelia Earhart did what was considered unthinkable. She flew solo across the Atlantic Ocean to demonstrate that women like to do such things and can. The world reacted with unbridled excitement. In addition to Amelia's flying achievements, she made her mark in other ways. In the 1930s, she disapproved of the special minimum wage law for women, which was lower than that for men, and she fought for equal rights for men and women. After her famous flight, she was invited to speak at many functions where she discussed her political views as well as her experiences flying. In 1932, Eleanor Roosevelt was asked to introduce Amelia at one of these speeches. That's how they met. Eleanor Roosevelt moved into the White House in 1933 during the Great Depression. She transformed the role of First Lady by becoming a commanding role model. When the country went on food rationing, she insisted the White House do the same. When cars became increasingly popular, she drove one despite criticism. When she saw inequality, she became an activist for women and human rights. Her practical approach to issues gained her enormous respect. Many people said she was a woman ahead of her time. She would have said it was just common sense. Eleanor loved flying, and she did receive her student pilot's license with encouragement from Amelia, who intended to teach her. Eleanor sent the license to Amelia as proof that she was ready to begin her training, but Franklin discouraged the plan. They could not afford an airplane, and it was a risk he did not wish her to take. Eleanor agreed, but she continued to love and promote air travel. She flew more passenger miles in the 1920s and 1930s than any other woman in the world. On April 20th, 1933, Amelia and her husband, G.P. Putman, were invited to spend the night at the White House. Amelia was in town to give a speech the next day to the Daughters of the American Revolution. That night, still in formal dress and white gloves, Amelia arranged to take Eleanor for a flight over Washington, D.C. Although Amelia did take the controls for part of the flight, the plane was also flown by 2 of Eastern Air Transport's pilots due to regulations. For this fictionalized book, though, it seemed much more exciting to have these 2 good friends and brave women alone on their wonderful adventure. Eleanor did take a turn in the cockpit, where the pilot explained the controls to her, and when the plane took an unexpected dip, the reporters joked that the First Lady was flying it. Almost all of Amelia and Eleanor's dialogue in my story comes from newspaper accounts, book transcripts, and diaries. Eleanor loved cars and driving. Some people said she liked to drive fast. Whether or not it was a new car waiting when she and Amelia got back from the airport remains speculative. One research account supports this story, and I love the idea that might have really sneaked away together. Amelia herself recorded that they ate crab chowder that night for dinner. She mentioned in her thank you note to Eleanor, which I found during my research, an angel food cake was one of Eleanor's favorite desserts, a fact confirmed by the White House Diary and the Presidential Cookbook, both by Henrietta Nesbitt and Roosevelt's housekeeper during the White House years. Amelia Earhart and Eleanor Roosevelt were remarkable women who mesmerized the public with their lives. Sadly, in 1937, in an attempt to be the first woman to fly around the world, Amelia and her plane mysteriously vanished somewhere over the South Pacific. She was never heard from again. In 1938, a year after Amelia Earhart's tragic disappearance, her husband, G.P., found Eleanor Roosevelt's student pilot's license among Amelia's papers. He wrote to Mrs. Roosevelt and included the license as a memento of the time when Eleanor Roosevelt almost became Amelia's star pupil. And here is an actual picture of Amelia and Eleanor look out the window of an Eastern transport plane during their night flight on April 20th, 1953. So I hope you've enjoyed our story. Thanks for listening.